Hi there, I'm Frater IAC, and this is Initiation into Hermetics, Step 1, Spirit Exercise 3, Vacancy of Mind. Barden calls it Thought Mastery in Initiation into Hermetics. Now, remember, okay, let's go on to the next slide. Let's look at his instructions first. All right, so Barden says, we will learn now to produce a complete vacancy of mind. And remember, this whole thing started with the awakening of your observer. The observer is your higher self. The higher self must be in charge of your body, soul, and mind in order for you to attain the end result that Barden says that you're shooting for. In his epilogue in Initiation into Hermetics, he says the objective of this initiatory path is to connect with God. However you think of God, the Insof, the source, the force, doesn't matter. Okay, it's the same creative force, and it's conscious, but not as we are. It's more of a passive awareness, a quantum field, if you will. So we're going to learn now to awaken that observer even further, because remember, in the first step, we learned how to have the observer step back and just watch the clouds that are thoughts floating across that clear blue sky of the mind without engaging them. Then we looked into mindfulness, where we talked about living in the present and not being enslaved by the past or the future. All right? Being mindful, living in the present moment, focused on where you are and what you're doing at all times. Then we went and part two of that mindfulness bit was the focused concentration, which is really important because you're going to build on that skill doing this. I have two sample exercises here that we're going to do together to help you get what it is that we're doing and get a feel for it, you know? So Barton goes on and he says, relax your body. And I've got that crossed out. Don't lay on a sofa or bed to do these exercises. That's just I don't know why he put that in there because falling asleep during these exercises is a bad habit to get into. Um, I have a couple of times in early steps fallen asleep and it throws you off. You don't want to do it. And so I advocate what's called the throne asana posture, where you sit in a straight back chair, feet flat on the ground, hands palms down on your knees, straight back, straight neck. That's your throne asana posture. And later on, you're going to learn how to create a very, very positive, pleasant body memory. When you go into your asana, it's going to feel great. Barden is going to teach you how to do this and how to hold that asana posture for indefinitely. You know, the litmus is an hour, but basically indefinitely. And most experienced people on this path, when they go in the asana posture, that quiets them, body, soul, and mind, because they know their being knows that they're about ready to engage in these spiritual practices. And they begin to look forward to this. So, anyway, close your eyes, vigorously reject any thought that attacks you. Hmm, we'll talk about that in a minute. Nothing must be permitted to appear in your spirit or mind. Only complete mental vacancy should prevail. So, no thoughts. Hmm. But prevail, though, doesn't imply a complete blankness. Prevail implies most of the time under control. I mean, to me, that's the meaning I take from that word. So, and we'll talk about that a little more, what this actually is, because so many people have just boatloads of trouble with this thing because they let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Take it as far as Barden tells you to, and then move on. And it's going to take you some months to get through the soul mirrors anyway, and you have plenty of time to get good at this. So don't stress about it. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Just keep on practicing it. And every time you do it as perfectly as you can without worrying about the results, and the results will always come. All right. So Barden says you should maintain this vacant state of mind without digressing or forgetting yourself. In the beginning, you're only going to be able to do it for a few seconds, which is true. However, through repeated practice, you will become successful. And he says once you've succeeded in remaining in this state of passive awareness, because you're emulating the creative force, you're emulating God. It's conscious, but not in the same way we are. It is a passive awareness. That's what you're shooting for here. So once you've succeeded in this, um, then the purpose of this exercise has been achieved. Okay. I was left wondering what the purpose of the exercise actually is. And that's the context that I want to build in this video, because unless you know why and what this is leading to, it's going to just be unnecessarily difficult. So, and it doesn't need to be, because back to this sentence about vigorously rejecting any thought that attacks you, that makes it seem like you're a brain with big bulging biceps flexing its muscles and struggling mightily against these thoughts. That's a recipe for failure. Forget about that entirely, because this is not about a monumental act of will, okay? This is about achieving a passive awareness where you gently nudge away any thought before it can even emerge in as a cloud in the clear blue sky of your mind. That's all it is. It's the same thing as thought control, but you're just stopping the clouds before they move into your awareness. That's all. Okay, so let's move on. Because the first time you do this, you're gonna meet these guys. Aren't they fun? I love monkeys. Um, my spouse wanted to get a monkey, but we decided against it because those things could you let one of them go in your house, think of the destruction it could cause. Anyway, because look at them, they're wonderful little animals, but you don't want them in your mind chattering because you're trying to achieve a passive state of awareness so your higher self can grow in power. That's what you're doing. So this is the monkey mind, and you can read down below. It's a Buddhist term. It emphasizes the untamed nature of the mind, because most uninitiated people have very undisciplined minds, don't they? I mean, before you chose to embark upon this path of initiation, you too may have been, well, you were uninitiated. And this is what you're going to encounter the first time you go in and start doing this is these little chattering guys. And they get tiresome after, like the 20th time. So we got to figure out how to get rid of them. Well, let's do that. Oh, and how can you not love this slide? Okay, look at this picture. I love this thing. This is the Cheshire Cat. And this is the Cheshire Cat from Tim Burton's wonderful 2010 film, Alice in Wonderland. Beautiful movie. I mean, it's amazing. And so Alice, goes through the looking glass, she falls down that hill, and then she's walking along and she comes to a fork in the road. And she looks down one fork of the road and then down the other fork of the road. And then she looks up and there's a cat, the Cheshire cat, and it's sitting in the tree above her. And she says, "Which path should I take?" And the Cheshire cat replies, "Where do you want to go?" And Alice said, "I don't know where I'm going." And the cat said, and I'm butchering this, I'm paraphrasing it, but the cat basically answered, "Well, if you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there." And that's true. And I included this mostly because I love this picture, but the path you're going is toward embracing the full power of yourself as a human being. This is your birthright. The initiation into Hermetics is a training path, an initiatory path that gets you out of materialism and helps you grow spiritually until you can attain unity with the divine mind. That's what we're shooting for here. Okay, so that is the path. Oh, for goodness sake. You can read the title. I didn't click the little scroll thing on my mouse. So the best bet's to get some real context around where you're going. Yep. Where does it lead to? I'm going to tell you. Okay. So now let's talk about every person, okay? Because everybody who is not an initiate, who is not particularly experienced with these techniques of spiritual transformation or spiritual alchemy, look at what's going on. This is the guy. This is you. This is me. Most of us are sitting there all the time until we train ourselves not to. And we're like these are zombie hands, and they're reaching up out of the ground, grabbing at your feet, reminding you constantly of the past. Like my favorite is I had this teacher named Mrs. F. Way back when in first grade. That's like 60 years ago, right? And so Miss F. Um, one time she yelled sometimes. It was very scary. So anyway, Miss F, I was at the bookshelf just minding my own business because I've always been bookish. I love books. And I'm at the bookshelf, and then these two kids beside me are making noise, but I'm fine. Well, Mrs. F singled me out and made me stand in the corner for something I didn't do. And you know, are you still holding a grudge like that when you're 40? Or when you're 25? You got to get rid of that stuff. If somebody, um, stood you up on a date, when you were a teenager and you're 45 now, that's gone. You got to get rid of that. You have to make these zombie hands go away, because they'll grab your heel and keep you from moving on, you know? Ruled by the past. Usually it's guilt, resentment, you know, nursing some grudge. Don't do it. And then look at this other side. Look at the right hand picture here on the slide. I love this picture. Wow, I found this on Pixabay, and it's wonderful. It's public domain, but look how artful it is. And I mean, here's this guy, okay, and instead of even paying attention to the present moment, he has no time for the present because he's burdened by all of tomorrow's worries. He's scared to death of the future. He's scared of dying. He's scared of getting sick. He's scared of suffering. He's scared of losing his job. He's attached to this. He's attached to that. And he can't. How are you going to awaken your higher self and tame your monkey mind? Because this is the monkey mind. This is what that is. Okay. How are you going to tame the monkey mind until you get rid of these attachments to the past and the burden of the future and live in the present moment? See, that's why this guy's depressed. He hasn't done that yet. So that's what we're going to do now. And with the soul mirrors. So, and it took me a long time to understand this. Okay. I struggled with vacancy of mind. Okay. So, don't feel bad because you're not going to be good at this right away. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Okay. Now, what's interesting here, this is a quote from Stylianos Ateshlis. Now, he was a contemporary of Franz Barden. He was born in 1919 in Nicosia, Cyprus. So he's in Nicosia, and he's a public servant. He's a humble guy, but he's got a PhD. He's a smart guy, and he was an adept, just like Barden was. Barden, I think, was Catholic. Stylianos Ateshlis was Eastern Orthodox, and so he had a Christian mindset as well. But he writes in his book, The Esoteric Teachings, because he was a Hermetic initiate just like Barden, so it's well worth reading his books as well. He says if we reckon that our permanent personality self has put on many personalities in time and space place in different epochs, and that it has lived in many different ways. And if we could simultaneously call to mind all the experiences it has had right up to the latest, he's talking about successive incarnations because he believes in reincarnation, right? And he's talking about reincarnation. So all of these lives that you've led, plus the times in between, we would see that all these things are merely the impressions in the worlds of pain and joy. That's pretty profound. And so he goes on and asks, who is it really? Who is it inside you that feels? Who really thinks? Is our self of yesterday different from the self of today? Who had yesterday's experiences? Wow. And so that's uh that's why I put this diagram out here to the left. Who are you really? This is a really good meditation. I mean, you can contemplate this for a time and it's time well spent because who are you without your body? Who are you without your name, your sex, your health, your mind? Who are you without your current set of talents, your characteristics, your emotions? Who are you without your career, your hobbies, your education? Who are you? And Stylianos Ateshlis talks about how each of us is basically an immortal spirit that was created when divine providence blew itself up and created us all as these little monads, and these little monads are immortal. That's our immortal spirit, and it goes through life after life after life after life. But those lives are for the purpose of teaching it and developing it and allowing it to go back to a state of unity with the divine mind. It's a journey back. Um, Teshless was a Kabbalist, as Barden was. So the Kabbalah is a good cosmology to think about this. Because you're going up the tree of life. Um, so here we go. That's a Teshless. Good practice to think about who you really are. Because later on, you're going to be getting in touch with your astral body, your mental body, your causal body. I mean, that's, by the time you're in step 8 or step 9, step 10, you're going to be doing astral travel. You're going to be connecting and having conversation with your holy guardian angel, and you're going to be connecting to the Godhead. I mean, that's what this leads to. So, anyway, enough of that. I have a colleague who's actually a pretty good friend. Uh, she is a very interesting and athletic person, and she has gone at least twice that I know of to Spain to take the Camino Trail, to make the Camino pilgrimage. And you can see that all of these trails, and some of them are hundreds of miles long, okay? And they go to the Santiago de Compostela um, in Spain. Um, so it's a religious pilgrimage, and many of the people that walk these trails are on a pilgrimage. Some are just going to hike the trails because they're picturesque. But the reality is, this is a Camino. And so, what is a Camino? Well, look at the card, the tarot card. I usually read from the Rider-Waite deck, although I use the Marseille deck at times because it has a higher symbolism. But because there are some purposeful misguidings in the Rider-Waite deck because it was kind of for general consumption, and then Golden Dawn had its secret deck of tarot cards. Tarot's an excellent study too. I may do some videos on tarot also, but I when I read the tarot, I generally always read spiritually, not in a mundane sense, because I don't really care. Well, how's this project going to go at work? What I care about is my spiritual ascent, because that's what really counts. That's what really matters. So anyway, this card I call the Camino. Okay. And a Camino is a solitary spiritual journey. Look at the story the card tells. There are 8 cups, and these 8 cups symbolize relationships that chain this person to the earth, to this plane, this material plane. Their fears, the fear of death, the fear of suffering, the fear of hunger, the fear of deprivation, the fear of humiliation, the attachment to old grudges, the attachment to bad habits and addictions. Those are what's in those cups. Okay? And this person has decided to turn his back on those cups and go on a solitary spiritual journey. And notice the red cloak and the red boots, okay? There is, in fact, an element of will involved in this, and you're going to find that out when you start working the soul mirrors. Um, you have to exert your will and then start following the path. It's will plus action is volition, and you're going to be using a lot of volition to transform yourself and purify yourself through active introspection. And we're going to talk about all about that in subsequent videos, so don't worry about it. But look at this person, look at that mountain that they're walking toward, right? That's the same mountain. If you're familiar with the tarot, you know the major arcana card that's called the Hermit. The Hermit is the old guy that's on the Led Zeppelin 4 album cover. He's got the lantern, and he's on top of the mountain and he's looking down to see he's gotten to the top of the mountain. He's climbed the mountain. He's purified his soul. He's finished his initiatory path. And now he's at the top of the mountain and he's holding this lantern, which is his consciousness, his expanded consciousness, and he's looking at the wonders that lie ahead. That's where this guy's going. See that mountain? That's that mountain. So he's going to go climb that mountain. He's going to go through the initiatory path. I love that card. And I often get it when I'm reading for myself on the tarot. So anyway, enough of that. Oh, let's try it. All right. There are a bunch of different ways to think about this. Um, One of the best ways is to think about the ocean, the water. Do you know the ocean waves are the rhythm of life? Like if you're ever on the beach, and you listen to those waves coming in. Gosh, that's like the breath of life. When you're meditating and you track your breath, you're doing the same thing. You're tapping into the rhythm of life. It's wonderful. And so this guy is a scuba diver. And he looks like he's got some pretty good gear. Those flippers are kind of big. Um, and he's got his air tank and he's down under the water. And look at the waves above him. I mean, it looks like there's a storm going on above him. And that's kind of how life is sometimes, isn't it? You're bobbing like a cork on these waves and they're going up and down and they're the white caps and you're bobbing like a cork carried by the vagaries of life. And you gotta get away from those waves. And that's what vacancy of mind will help you do. Because here's this diver and he has gone through those waves and down until he's now in the quiet of the ocean. He's not on the surface, he's below the surface, and it's quiet. There's no noise, there's just him and fish. Except there's no fish here because I took the fish out of this drawing because I wanted to make it, or out of this image because I wanted to show it like this exercise actually is. So essentially, what you're going to do in this exercise, we're going to do this for about 30 seconds. This is one of the ways that I learned how to do this well. Okay. So I imagined that I was diving down in the ocean and I would go through the surface. I would cut through the surface waves, all that commotion on the surface, and I would go down and down and down until I was in a still place. So that's what we're going to do. So you're going to sit in your asana posture and you're going to follow Barden's instructions. You're going to clear your mind. You're going to leave behind this this apple cart of future worries that we saw in the previous slide. You're going to leave behind the zombie hands reaching out and grabbing your heel from all these old past resentments. You're leaving all that junk behind because it doesn't belong with you. It's meaningless in the context of the eternal now that is your actual existence. Okay? It's you want to get you want to go below that roiling surface and go to that area of silence. So now what we're going to do, 30 seconds, sit in your asana posture, go down there and just be passively aware. And what you're going to do is you're going to do just like you did with the thought control exercise. The very first exercise where you wakened your observer, and remember, you sat there and you just awakened the observer and you watched the clouds float by, the clouds of your thoughts, but you didn't engage them. This time, what you're going to do is you're going to go down there and you're going to gently keep them out of the space with gentle nudges. It's not a big act of will. You're creating a passive awareness and you're not fighting it. If a thought begins to arise, just gently nudge it away. That's all. So let's begin. All right. We had about 33 seconds there. How was it? Were you able to keep the thoughts away for 33.6 seconds? I suspect you were. Um, and the visual image is not a bad thing at first because, if you focus on what's going on in this picture and imagine yourself as this diver down in the quiet depth and then close your eyes, it's a little bit easier to keep your thoughts away than it is if you're trying real hard. So let's move on because I have a couple of other things I want to tell you, and then another way of looking at this and another sample exercise that may help you more than this one. I don't know. We're all different. So this is, I'm a huge fan of Itzhak Bentoff's Stalking the Wild Pendulum. It's an oldie but a goodie. He wrote the book back in 1977, but in chapter 5 of that book, he has a diagram which I basically recreated according to kind of the Barden path of initiation. But this is from Itzhak Bentoff in Stalking the Wild Pendulum. He's got a diagram quite similar to this in there because he practiced Eastern meditation for 10 years before he wrote that book. So, anyway, look at what's going on here. All right. This F1 to F5, these are frequencies of vibration. Consciousness vibrates, your awareness vibrates. So, when you're down here in this F1 stage, these are people who are very close to the line between life and death. Maybe they're starving, maybe they're at war, maybe they're a civilian population where the tanks are rolling in and, there's drone attacks and all that. Um, but, and they don't have very many options when it comes to the way they can respond to things that happen. They don't have very many responses that they can use. And then here we have, the lower levels of consciousness, apathy, things like that. And these are there aren't very many good options in these lower ranges of consciousness. Here is where you end up, experiencing anger, which is an anger is the first state of consciousness where somebody takes the bull by the horns and decides, okay, I'm going to do something about my situation. That is the first step of spiritual ascent. You don't want to stay there, but it's an encouraging sign. Now, the F5 range is the normal, healthy human range, maybe in the industrialized countries, where we essentially know that we're going to have enough to eat when we get up. We know we're going to have something to wear, transportation, a job, be able to pay the bills. That alleviates a lot of anxiety. And if we have that state in our life, then we're able to use a variety of strategies to respond to various stimuli. Like if you get laid off of work, or maybe you get a plumbing leak in your house, or, maybe your foundation settles and you're going to go through some expenses, whatever it is that happens, you've got more options. But now you get on the Barden path. Oh my goodness. And you'll see that frequency 6 and frequency 7, this is steps 1 and 2 of BART, and they're going to get you far, okay? Because you're going to go through these soul mirrors and you're learning how to first awaken your observer, and then you're going to train the observer during this time to be positioned to take charge of your ascent in later steps. And the point of this, look at this curve, right? Because as you get higher and higher, you get through the soul mirror. These are steps one and step two. Then you go through steps, 3 through step 10, and that's the basic initiatory path, believe it or not. But by the time you are through step 10, you're going to have connected with the Godhead. And so this line is going to flatten out. And so basically, you have an infinite choice of responses, many of them magic or metaphysical, to respond to the various stimuli you face in your mundane life. That's how it works. So I thought this was a pretty good diagram because the root cause of monkey mind is these black soul mirror characteristics. These are your fears and your attachments that are chaining you to this material plane, and you want to ascend into a more spiritual reality, something that's a little bit more subtle in its vibrations. That's what we're doing here. Okay? So now let's try it again. This is a different method. And this takes off, instead of taking off on thought control and building on that skill, like we did with the scuba diver slide, this one here is going to take off on focused concentration, right? Because what you're going to do here, and I need to explain this, as you are gaining mastery over the elements in steps 3 through about 7 or 8, you know, you're gonna master working with the elemental forces. You're gonna control them inside yourself, and you're gonna master them externally so that you can control them externally. Okay, and what you're gonna do, what happens there is you start building strength within in each of these elemental forces. They serve you now. You're not a slave to them because you have conquered them within yourself, right? And so you're building this nice quiet tunnel, or we could call it a well, whatever it is. I think of mine as a well, but it has these brick walls. And when I drop down this well, I go into vacancy of mind. But before I go, I ask a question. Whatever it is I'm working on, am I working on a project? Is there something I haven't quite gotten my head around yet? I'll ask the question, and then I'll drop down into this well of silence, which is, you're getting started with it. You're building it through vacancy of mind. Okay. And I drop down into this well of silence, and darned if I don't get inspiration and insight. And I have used this method for years across the board because I'm often asked to research things that I'm not particularly familiar with and then present the results of that research to an audience of laypersons, okay, the like aren't scientists, you know. And in order to do that, I need the right inspiration. And so this is what this leads to. This is the amazing resource you're going to have at your fingertips after you are done after you have mastered this exercise and gained real mastery over the elements in the subsequent steps. That's what you're leading to here. So this takes off on focused concentration because you see, I put a star here at the end of the tunnel. And there's no train track here, because the old joke about being the light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully it's not the headlight of an oncoming train. This is not an oncoming train. This is divine mind. because that's what vacancy of mind leads to ultimately is your ability to see and interact with the creator, the source. So what we're going to do is we're going to sit back again in our asana posture and we're going to quiet our mind and we're going to focus on this star. And we're going to do that for another 30 seconds and just gently keep all the thoughts from intruding on you. And the brickwork helps. See, because what you're doing when you create this well of silence, the bricks hold out these extraneous thoughts so that you can focus on the portal and the meeting place between your higher self and the source. That's what this is. So now let's do it. 30 seconds. Begin. Oh my goodness. I went I went about 48 seconds. Oh, for goodness sake, stop. Okay, that's my stopwatch. All right. Um, how how was that? Did that work for you? Because I've given you two methods, all right? And what I've illustrated here for you is that these exercises are cumulative. They lead, each one leads to the ability to do the next one. Okay? So the first exercise with the scuba diver took off on thought control. This one took off on concentrate, focus concentration. So either way, try both and see what happens for you. All right, that's it for this one. The next video that we do here is going to start getting into the soul mirrors. And that is the most challenging magic that you're going to do in initiation into Hermetics, among the most challenging magic that you're going to do, but it's fundamental to the entire ascent. It's so important. So, and I have a lot of methods of active introspection that I can show you besides the five that Barton gives you in step one, but we're going to focus on those because those are okay to get you through to the point where you can safely go on to step three. So enough of that. Farewell until next Saturday.